The most important card in Innistrad Midnight Hunt has just been spoiled. The only way to save mankind from the dangers that are lurking in the dark is to unleash the secrets of the Celestus.
The Magic Historian.
Greetings, owners of fine luxury cardboard rectangles. My friends, I hope the day finds you well, because we are here to do two of my favorite things. Talking about new Magic cards and talking about awesome Magic the Gathering lore. So, the card that just got spoiled today is the Celestus. This features very prominently in the Innistrad Midnight Hunt story. It is going to be central to halting what is going on the plane and saving mankind, because things are getting very dangerous if you're a human on Innistrad. If you weren't aware, Wizards of the Coast has already released the first installment of lore. So we know a bit of the backstory, and the Celestus is going to be a central item in it. So in this video, what we're going to do is we're going to go over a couple of spoiler cards that tie in to the main storyline. I'm going to give you a somewhat rough guide to what's going on Innistrad. If you want the full story and you want to know everything that's going on, then come on over to my Fantasy Geographic channel, where I cover Magic the Gathering lore in depth. I've already recorded one of these videos and it will be available on that channel soon, so I'll leave a link at the end of the video for that in case you're interested in the grander scope of the story. But basically what's going on Innistrad is the days are getting shorter and shorter, and the nights are getting longer and longer. And this isn't a normal sort of progression for Innistrad. This is decidedly different than usual. Every day they get the littlest bit less of daylight and a little bit more night. So over time, it really starts to add up. And it's reached the point now where you have frost and ice and snow creeping in. Crops are starting to fail, and even worse than that, werewolves and vampires, especially vampires, are emboldened by this extra amount of darkness, and they are rampaging further and further from their local hunting grounds, making things an absolute nightmare for the humans of the plane. So the story is basically shown to us through the eyes of Arlinn. Arlinn, even though she is a werewolf, can't bring herself to turn her back on humanity. She wants to help the humans of Innistrad, so she is investigating what is going on. Now, her investigations lead her to the discovery of a white stag, and that leads her actually to the discovery of the Celestus and the people who live around the Celestus in kind of a hidden enclave, right? So basically, you have this group of witches and warlocks that know that the Celestus is key to saving Innistrad and undoing what's going on. Up until this point, at least for the more recent part of Innistrad's history, the angel Avacyn had been looking over the plains denizens and protecting them, making things safe for mankind. But now that Avacyn is gone, there is nothing really aside from mankind itself to protect mankind. And so a return to the old ways is necessary. And that's actually where the Celestus ties in. The Celestus is a location on Innistrad. This is not just an artifact, it's literally a geographical place. I'm going to put up an image of the Celestus in full, because unfortunately the card that we got spoiled, the image itself isn't that great, but there is a higher resolution version of just the artwork. And I'm sure as you've been looking at it, it's been giving you a sense of the grand scale of it. It's almost like a cityscape, right? Take a look at it. It looks really cool, but at the same time, you can see that it's run down and broken in places. It's got kind of a ruinous aspect to it, and there are a number of different spikes, and just, it feels like an old, unused, it's sort of got like a compass or other navigational tool vibe to it, but it's a very striking looking place. And basically, the superstitious residents of Innistrad have warned their children to stay away from this place. It has a particular aura, but it has laid dormant for basically time immemorial. People can't remember when this Celestus was anything other than a ruin, except for a coven of witches that is very much aware that the Celestus is central to saving Innistrad and restoring the proper balance of night and day. So now taking a look at the card itself and its mechanics, it's a 3 casting cost artifact. It is a legendary artifact because it is there's only one of them in existence, and it could actually in a way be a legendary land as well. You totally could have done that instead as a design choice. So the Celestus is tied in to the day-bound, night-bound mechanic, and the other cards we're actually going to talk about today are as well, because this concept of night and day is central to the storyline. If balance isn't restored, not only will the monsters of Innistrad destroy mankind, but they'll run out of food too. So it's a double whammy. Now, what does the Celestus do? Well, when it comes into play, when it enters the battlefield, if it's neither day nor night, it becomes day as the Celestus enters the battlefield. And if you haven't already seen, the day-night mechanic concept is something that's brand new to Magic and is specifically used with Innistrad Midnight Hunt, although it's possible that future sets may also use this mechanic, all right? So, on top of making it daytime, if you haven't already established whether it's day or night, the Celestus taps to add a mana of any color, so it's already a mana rock. 3 mana for an artifact that taps for a mana of any color is pretty standard fare these days. And it has the ability 3 and tap it. If it's night, it becomes day. Otherwise, it becomes night. Activate only as a sorcery. Now, obviously, this gives us a very direct idea of why this is important for Innistrad. This is clearly the device that's going to be used to roll Innistrad back into its proper day-night chronology, right? This is something somehow that's going to be able to do that. And we find out from the lore that we've been given, the idea is to use the communal power of a ton of humans to power this. Now, I don't know if that's going to be in a more nefarious way where the humans lose their lives, or if it's just the combined power, like almost like prayer style ability that imbues this. So we'll have to find out exactly how that works. I'm not sure that I trust the Coven of Witches to not have some kind of ulterior motive as well, because they did disappear when Avacyn showed up, and the Coven didn't reawaken until Avacyn was gone. So it's entirely possible that they may not be purely magnanimous, and there may be something darker underlying what they're doing. But that just makes me more excited to find out what's going on, right? Now, to continue with the Celestus ability, whenever day becomes night or night becomes day, you gain 1 life. You may draw a card. If you do, discard a card. So even if you don't care about the day and night cycle for your other cards, like if you're just using this on its own, it taps for a mana of any color. You can make it night and day, but if night and day isn't relevant for any other cards, then this basically becomes 3 tap, gain a life, you may draw a card. If you do, discard a card. And that's not too shabby, tapped on, like just stapled onto a mana rock. Overall, this is not a shabby card. For me, I'm excited about it because of how it ties into the story. Now, I said we had some other cards that tie into the story to talk about as well, and one is Arlinn The Packs Hope. Now, we did touch on half of this card in the video that I did talking about the day or night mechanic, but I wanted to take a look at the nice showcase artwork that they have here and look at the flip side of the card, which I haven't gotten to talk about. So, Arlinn The Packs Hope is 1 green, 1 red, and 2 for a 4 loyalty planeswalker. She is day-bound. How day-bound permanents work is when they come into play, if it hasn't already been made day or night, it becomes day. If it's already night and you're going to play a card that's day-bound, you actually flip it over to its night-bound side, and it comes into play with its night-bound side face up. So I do like this day-night flow. Anyways, 4 mana, 4 loyalty, +1 until your next turn. You may cast creature spells as though they had flash, and each creature you control enters the battlefield with an additional +1/+1 counter on it. By giving your creatures flash, it allows you to play the creatures on your opponent's turn, and it gives you more of an ability to control the flipping between day and night. Because if you have a day-bound version out of something, and you don't play any spells during your turn, then it becomes nighttime and flips to the night side. And the night version works where if you play 2 spells during your turn, then it's going to flip over to the day side. So by being able to cast spells on your opponent's side, on your opponent's turn, you can keep it day if you want. You can cast multiple spells, and it's not going to be like, oops, it's nighttime now, right? So it gives you a little bit of control that way. And then it's got the -3 ability, create 2/2/2 green wolf creature tokens. I like this because Arlinn is depicted in the story traveling with her pack. She originally is setting out just trying to figure out what's going on behind all the destruction in villages. And that leads her to seeking out who's named the witch. And on her hunt for the witch, she and her wolves encounter this white stag, and the wolves want to hunt it, but Arlinn says, no, it's got kind of a holy feel to it. We're not going to hunt this stag. Like, they track it down, but they don't end up destroying the stag. They let it go, and they let it live. And we'll come back to that in a minute because it doesn't turn out the way she had quite hoped. So let's take a look at the Nightbound side of Arlinn. Actually, sorry, I want to take a moment to talk about how cool the actual card frame is. It's got this like autumnal kind of harvest vibe to it, right? Like you can see up in the corner because it is a daybound, nightbound. You've got the sun up here in the corner, but then all around the border, you have these leaves, and it almost feels like kind of like wheat and plant vines that have been intertwined around it, right? You've got like newer ones that are green, but a lot of them are yellow with that kind of autumnal vibe. And it's just got this kind of homespun, like down on the farm kind of feel to it, even with the wood paneling that shows up on the side of the text box here. I really like this showcase frame. This is a win for me. And the art style that they've chose for this is also really cool, with Arlinn standing there with the trees that have lost all their leaves in the background and the two wolves, the one like looking up to her while she's got her hand resting on it. That's cool. And you can see her one arm is actually mid-transformation as she's turning into her werewolf form. And this is her in her werewolf form, looking really, really intense. So this is the Nightbound side. You can see that it's got the moon up here at the top, and the sides here actually look a little darker as well, right? They don't have the same level of life energy that the other side of the frame does, which I dig. So her +2 ability is to add a red and a green, and a 0 ability is, until end of turn, Arlinn the Moon's Fury becomes a 5/5 werewolf with trample, indestructible, and haste. That's pretty interesting. I mean, it's got a transformation style concept, right? 5/5 trample, indestructible, and haste. Not too shabby. And that's cool because, like I said, you can actually put her into play with the Nightbound side face up. If it happens to be night when you play her, she comes in Nightbound, and you can swing with her right away, in case you were wondering why it had haste. So ultimately, the artwork for this looks awesome. The trees look way more intimidating when they're done in this bloody red aspect, and it looks like Arlinn has something that she hunted matted into her fur. It's pretty intense artwork overall. This is the most vicious that Arlinn has ever appeared. Now, we have one other spoiler card to talk about, and this is Tovolar the Dire Overlord. Tovolar is another werewolf. He used to reign over the Mondronin werewolf pack, but that pack actually got disbanded, and he kind of was a lone wolf for a while. Now, with Avacyn gone, he has formed a new wolf pack, and there is some menace to him. Remember when I mentioned that Arlinn had hunted that white stag, but ultimately her and her wolves did not destroy that stag? Well, Tovolar has been trailing after Arlinn, and he does not approve of her goals, her aims. He wants werewolves to rule supreme. He wants them to run free in the night. So he is 100% on board with the night being the dominant force. And as a result, what he does is, while Arlinn and the wolves are sleeping, he slayed the white stag, and he took his sword and he drove it down into the earth and put the stag's skull on top of it, so that when Arlinn woke up the next morning, she would see his message to her. You can't save these stags. Better to run with what you actually are. Spend time with your own kind. But Arlinn, at least at this point in the story, wants nothing to do with Tovolar. So, Tovolar is 1 green, 1 red, and 1 for a 3/3 legendary human werewolf. Whenever a wolf or werewolf you control deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you control 3 or more wolves and or werewolves, it becomes night. Then transform any number of human werewolves you control. So you can see that he definitely has a very martial-oriented style to him, right? He is all about engaging in battle with the card draw, and he's all about nighttime reigning and werewolves being in their werewolf form because of this ability down here, where as long as you have 3 wolves or werewolves, it automatically is night. It doesn't matter however many spells you've cast. None of that matters. As long as Tovolar has his pack, he will keep it nighttime. And I like the fact that it lets you transform werewolves from previous Innistrad sets in with that ability as well. That's really cool. And the artwork is pretty ominous. Tovolar is an intimidating figure, and this is just him in his human form. Previously, Tovolar only would reside in his wolf form. He would never return to his human form. He was able to retain his human thoughts and sanity while in wolf form, but he never wanted to return to being a wolf. And you can see in this artwork, he has now embraced his human form, and he has all these humans following him. And I love how everybody is cloaked in darkness, right? All the people behind him are shadowy figures, but they all have this show of strength. And even Tovolar himself is somewhat shrouded in darkness, helping to key into that sort of concept that he is definitely a beast of the night. And also, the perspective that we're seeing the artwork at is from a position of weakness, where he is standing towering above us and we're looking up at him, which adds an extra level of menace. And the posturing in his arm makes it feel like he is about to swing this axe downwards. It is an intense vibe, really well done. So let's take a look at the other side of Tovolar. This is Tovolar the Midnight Scourge, and he's a werewolf wielding a sword and armor, which adds an extra level of intensity to it, right? Like, look at the werewolves that are all leaping out behind him. None of them have the same level of menace. It totally marks him out as the leader and is far more terrifying. When you're dealing with regular werewolves, at least at that point, you're just dealing with an instinctual being that is just motivated by rage and hunger and the desire to hunt. But Tovolar gets to keep his human cunning to go with it, which adds an extra layer of intensity. And I just noticed that the Nightbound side of the frames has kind of rags tied to them as well. These frames are very evocative of an autumnal sort of feeling in the farmlands, making do with what you have. That's awesome. And again, the artwork depicts us in a very dangerous position where Tovolar is about to end us. Now, in terms of his abilities, whenever a wolf or werewolf you control deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. And one red, 1 green, and X. Target wolf or werewolf you control gets +X+0 and gains trample until end of turn. I like that because +X+0 spells have been shown in the past as like howling, like howl into the night, and his powerful howls literally imbue his followers with crazy rage and power. How intense would that be? You just see this werewolf pack like loping towards you, and then you realize the leader of the werewolf pack is wearing armor and has a sword. This is no ordinary werewolf. And then there's a pause where he throws back his head and howls just this crazy throaty growl. And all of a sudden, a werewolf that's near to him, its muscles start rippling out larger, and it starts snarling and jabbering and foaming at the mouth, and it just starts running with more intensity, and death is looming in its eyes. The flavor behind this is through the roof, man. And the end of the first lore chunk that we've got for Innistrad ends with, like, basically Arlinn has located the Celestus and the people living there, and she's learning about how it's the only hope for mankind, and she's skeptical, but she's learning about how it's the hope for mankind, and then her conversation is cut short by this howl in the night because Tovolar's pack has found them. And it's just so gripping and chilling. Again, I'm going to put the story up on Fantasy Geographic as soon as it's ready. I encourage you to subscribe to it if you're interested in hearing the lore, because this story seems like it's going to be a good one. I, for one, am super hyped about what's going on with Innistrad so far. So, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. A big thank you to all of my patrons for supporting my channel. If you like what I'm doing, like the video. If you love what I'm doing, then support me on Patreon. Thanks for coming by, my friends. I will see you next time.